Never seen a smile so big on my little old lady's face until I tell her I'm going fishing all weekend. Pack up all of my bacon, I make plans for 7:45, and I swing around, pick up my date for the weekend. Some reason she seems to please when I'm leaving. There's something I'm missing when I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing.
Good evening, David. Good evening, Curtis. What's up, Rod Shirley? Rod Shirley's in the house. Shot Fortes here. Eve, how you doing? Terry Robertson. Yeah, baby. Rocky, how you, my friend? Rocky. Rob Alspatch is with us. Terry Snyder. Mike Brazeau. Yeah, baby. Congratulations on behalf of all of CFN, Mike. We're going to miss you at Horwood. I don't want to say this to say anything negative about the new owners. But without you, Yana, and the dogs, it might not be the same. No offense, just we've grown roots at Horwood, and we look forward to meeting the new owners, and look forward to what's going to happen with the future of the CFN retreat. And I just want everybody to know, outside of COVID, the CFN retreat is still a go. We've got lots to get to today. One of which is I got to bring in Mike Consul. But before we start, I just wanted to say tonight's show, and I'll put it here in the bottom, the highlights. We lost another good one, folks. Just realized it today. Matt Savea, I believe, was the one who posted it that I saw. Andrew Scarr, unfortunately, is no longer with us. And, Andrew was a good part of our coast-to-coast crusade back in the day, and I think it was about 4 years ago that we did that. James Mathias basically left. He went east, a little bit east, and then went all the way west. And Andrew Scarr was part of one of those segments, and unfortunately, he's been battling cancer, and we lost another good one. That's all I can say. I mean, first, we've lost lots, but Rob Cadeau recently, and now Andrew. This darn cancer is not fun. So our thoughts and prayers go out to our buddy Andrew, who is no longer with us. And as I said, as I post this, and I should have been a little bit more organized, but as I post this, just reflect on what Andrew meant to you. He certainly meant a lot to our CFN community. He helped out with providing us lots of content. Certainly, as I mentioned, with the Coast to Coast Crusade, James Mathias did a nice segment with him on the rivers, showed him a thing or two when it came to targeting trout and salmon. But he was a solid guy. Anybody that knew Andrew knew him as a solid individual, and he will be sorely missed. So our prayers are going out to his friends and family who are mourning his loss. Now, let's bring it back on a bit of a happy note with our good friend Mike Consul. Mike, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, Scotty.
How you doing?
Good. Just I want to say hi to everyone out there. I see Curtis. I see Ken. I see Terry. I see Dave. I see Ron. I see Brad. Thanks.
What was that
Erica,
show
what's
back
up?
in the day? what was that show where, was it Mr. Dressup where he'd look into the mirror and say, I see? What was that show? I can't remember what that show was.
I can't remember, but Mr. Dressup was a good show.
Maybe it wasn't Mr. Dressup. Anyway, they used to look in the mirror and I see Bobby and I see Jackie and I see, anyway, I digress. Sorry, Mike, you got to get going. So you got a big announcement for us, big update when it comes to CFN Fish Off?
Yeah, join us tomorrow at 7 o'clock. We did take all the feedback from last year's contestants. At the end of last year, we asked people, hey, what do you think? What should change? What should stay the same? What should we emphasize? What might be tweaked? So we took all your feedback and we did some tweaking of the CFN rules for this coming spring fish off. So join us tomorrow at 7 o'clock. And the reason why I'm here is we are approaching 100 teams. And so we have a special draw for the first 100 teams to register, and you'll get this prize pack, which is definitely over $100. I was doing some math. So make sure you're one of the first 100 teams to register. I think we're approaching 80 teams right now. So there's a little bit of space left, and then you can qualify for that prize pack. And Scotty showed the picture there, but it.
Uh-oh. There you go. Moving the electronics, Mike. Anyway, Mike will be joining me if he doesn't rejoin the broadcast in the next couple seconds. I know he had to go anyway, but that is the prize pack. To register, you go to www.cfnfishoff.com. And any team registered, the first 100 teams, I should say, that register will qualify for this giveaway. And big shout out, thank you to all who have helped donate. But I do believe a lot of that's coming from Caught by Consul.
Actually, a lot of that is, if you look at that post on Facebook, and I'll make sure to pin it at the top, there's a lot of prizes there from a whole bunch of sponsors. So thank you to those sponsors that put that prize pack together.
Fantastic, my friend. So we'll see you tomorrow at 7. I know you had to get going. I don't even know what time it is. Oh, it's 10 after 7. So you're doing good. I didn't actually make you late.
Yeah, we're doing good.
Now, obviously, we're going to talk about COVID, and we're going to talk about how it's going to look if, in fact, we have to push the date back. As it is right now, the numbers are starting to go down across the country. They're going down slower in some places than others, but they are going down. The only thing I can suggest to you, and it's not because I'm trying to push an agenda by any means, but it would be my advice to get the shot if you get an opportunity to get the vaccine. I got Pfizer on Sunday, and I'll be honest with you, I'm fine. I no ill effects whatsoever, but I almost think that this thing's going to be mandatory if you plan on doing any kind of traveling. So keep that in mind. As I said, I know a lot of people have difference of opinions, and a lot of people are more concerned about the vaccine than they are the virus. I think it's probably in your best interest to get it, but that's just my opinion.
All right, Scotty. So join us tomorrow, 7 o'clock. We'll go over some of those new rule changes. Make sure to get in under the 100 registered teams so you qualify for that draw. And speaking with the judges, the cap will probably be 150 teams total. So we have 300 anglers, and it makes it a little more manageable for the team. So make sure to get in on Canada's largest online multi-species tournament.
So Romper Room. Thank you, Ken and Ron. It was Romper Room. Thank you very much. Sean Forte also got it. Yeah, look at that. All you guys are incredible. You all know. I remember that show too, Erica. Yeah, I'll never forget it. A couple questions just before you go, Mike. Is it 7 a.m. or 7 p.m.?
7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So 24 hours from now, come join Scotty and I for Tourney Tuesdays.
And Curtis is asking, when you mention teams, I'll let you answer this question, but what do you mean by teams?
So the CFN Fish Off, unlike the Winter Fish Fest or the Summer Slam or our Fall Brawl, the CFN Fish Off is partners. So Mark and Erica Beeler, that'd be one partner. Ken and I, the Defenders, that'd be a partner. Mitch and Brandon, the Drag Pullers, that's another partner. So the CFN Fish Off isn't an individual tournament. It's a team tournament. And what's amazing is every single week we're going to draw not one, but 2 Shimano combos for your team. So free to enter, free to win Shimano, and a amazing good time.
Right on, buddy. Well, listen, I know you got to run. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for putting that prize pack together and getting that post up. And we'll talk to you and hopefully all our CFNers and CFN fish offers tomorrow.
All right. See you tomorrow.
All right.
Good night.
Take care, Mike. And Kevin, I would say really based on the number of family members that you have, I would just call it the Lowen gang and just leave it at that, because who knows? That whole team is just incredible of yours. I think you got 6 kids and they all fish together. You guys did some phenomenal stuff over the wintertime, and we are blessed to have you a part of our community. How you doing, Cliff? Good to see you out on the West Coast. Again, Cliff will be doing yet another episode of his podcast with the BC Fishing Network this Wednesday night at 10:30 our time. So I invite you to tune in to Cliff. He's doing some great work with him and his team in regards to promoting BC's angling opportunities, which is all we could ask from a provincial ambassador such as Cliff to do. So good on you, Cliff, for doing that. I want to also mention to you that tonight we're going to be doing the grand prize draw of the Sparkus fishing giveaway, a day out in the water with our good buddy Sparkus Fisher. And he's going to take you and an 18 or younger angler with you. So there'll be 2 of you that will accompany him. A bunch of you did exactly what we asked. You tagged 3 names. You liked the pages if you hadn't already. So we really appreciate that. So we'll be getting to that tonight. So stay tuned. That'll be at the end. Sparkus is going to be joining us to do the giveaway. So stay tuned to that. This Thursday, well, first of all, I want to mention last Thursday, Jim did a phenomenal job, which we're going to talk to him real soon. And of course, Sparkus describing what it would be like to be out on a day on the water, whether it be the Detroit River or Lake St. Clair. Unfortunately, the window is closed for people to apply and qualify. So those who did, will find out who the winner is tonight. This Thursday, we're going to have 2 more and possibly a third. I'm bringing on my good buddy Ronald Coloresi from Toothy Critter Custom Rods. He's going to come on and he might be tying a rod for us. So he's going to give us a little bit of 411 on that. And Bruce Downs from Ugly Boys Baits is going to come on and talk to us about basically the history of Ugly Boys. Bruce has been around for a number of years. He's seen this industry. He's fished a whole whack, in comparison to some of us. And he knows his stuff. And now that he's providing our community baits, and from what I understand, is very busy. So that's a good thing. I'm glad to hear that. But we do have room for a third. So if there's somebody else out there that is a tackle producer or perhaps a guide, we'll invite you to come on and just get in touch with me after the show, and we'll see if we can fit you in. The giveaway will be courtesy of Ugly Boys Baits themselves. So a big shout out to Bruce for doing that. And again, when it comes to content, guys, it's been very difficult for me and the Legacy members to decide what content to share. You guys have been absolutely phenomenal. The fish handling has been very, very good. Your fish handling skills have been awesome. Submitting pics that, fish don't have blood on them, fantastic. And again, this is all a prelim to the fish off, because these are some of the things that we're going to be looking for. Obviously, good handling practices with the fish. If fish have blood on them, please do your best to clean it off before you submit the video or pic, whether it be content on our main page or to the CFN Fish Off. And of course, the release videos. My word, they're coming in fast and furious, and I'm hopefully going to get to them all. But we want to feature as many release videos as possible. So we're going to do them for Monster Monday. We're going to do them for Trout Tuesday. We're going to do them for Walleye Wednesday. And as walleye openers start to open up, I'm expecting to see a lot of walleye releases. And Jason Barnucz is going to be joining us later on today to talk about the importance of releasing those bigger walleye. So I invite you guys to stay tuned to that. Birthday announcements before we get to our good buddy, Big Jim McLaughlin. Is Scotty cutting out? I hope not. Not here in BC. It might be Sparkus. Who knows? I've been known to do that from time to time. On behalf of CFN and everybody who was associated with the Coast to Coast Crusade, big shout out birthday announcement to Robert W. And I'm not going to pronounce his last name because I'm going to butcher it. I would get it wrong every attempt. If I were to try it 6 days a week and twice on Sunday, I guarantee I'd get it wrong. Robert W. from Kilby Lodge was a huge part of our Coast to Coast crusade. James Matthias, who did that, Robert pulled over to the side, saw James just fishing off the bank, and asked him if he wanted to go out on a charter, and took him sturgeon fishing and caught a fish of a lifetime. So it was huge. And Robert's birthday was yesterday, so we want to say happy birthday to you, Robert, from Kilby Lodge. Big shout out to them for helping out our Coast to Coast crusade. Sherry Tom Porowski, Sherry, that is the name that I have on Facebook. I know you're a CFNer. Your birthday was 3 days ago in actually the same day as Dan Kiatowski. So to Sherry and Dan, happy belated birthday to you. Today's birthday, and he's turned a whopping 11. Sonny Fenoro. Sonny, happy birthday, my friend. Another birthday that we're celebrating today is Brian Sturch. Now, this is kind of cool because Brian was a part, I think 2 weeks ago, he was on here talking about that initiative to get kids fishing and buying tackle. Well, I am so pleased to announce that his initiative raised over $3,000. They had countless Cinderella rods, countless Spider-Man rods, kids' nets, Sienna combos from Shimano. They had a donated guide from our good friend Sparkus that they gave away, a bunch of tackle bags, a whole bunch of stuff. But as I said, over $3,000 was raised. And the cool thing, May 31st, right here, Brian is going to be announcing the grand prize winner of that program, that initiative, and that pretty cool deal that he put on. So big shout out to Brian for doing that. Brennan Tate, son of Cameron Tate, happy birthday to you. Sebastian Boudry, sorry. Again, I can't even read my own writing. Happy birthday to you as well. And anyone else we've missed. If it's your birthday today, tomorrow, upcoming, whatever, happy birthday. And hope it is a happy celebration for you. I also wanted to mention, too, Yvonne's going to be with us. She is taking on an initiative for OWA. She'll be joining us next week. So stay tuned to that. It's not the women's segment. That will be the following Monday. And I do believe Accessible Angling, Adele Dogan, might be joining us. So stay tuned to that. We are busy. Lots going on. And as always, I want to keep it going, keep it rolling, and make sure that everyone is sitting back and enjoying a great Monday night. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's bring up our good buddy Jim. But before we do, the best kick-arse video there is. There he is. There's the man. What? Oh,
what's going on?
A costume change. Man, you were blinding me with that. You were blinding me with that yellow T-shirt you had on, and now you've got the Shimano. You had a boy.
Yeah, it was from one of Dave Chong's kids events.
Oh, cool. Right on. Well, that's quite the shirt, my friend. And it does. Shimano does keep you fishing. Well, listen, you've been busy. You must be blind by now by all the flies you've been tying and hair jigs and what have you.
Forget that. You know the guy Keith in the video there?
Yes.
Keith Combs in the video. He won one of the parts of the retirement last weekend.
Wow.
He won a major MLF tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he won by I think he was going into the last day, he was 15 pounds ahead. And he ended up winning by I think he won by 7 or 8 pounds. But that's quite an accomplishment once again. I mean, he's won a couple of $1 million already, but you know, you can always tuck another half a suitcase away, eh?
Not too jabby. But you know, Jim, I've been thinking about you lately because you've seemed to be busier than normal when it comes to the tying task that you have, and I don't say it to be funny. But as I said, your eyesight must be somewhat strained, having to look at something that's
who is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Scotty. Hang on, hang on. I'll change my glasses. I'll be able to see. No.
Well, it's nice to know you're busy. You know, as however COVID has affected our industry and our mom and pop tackle shops and even our big box stores. It's interesting to hear how many people are busy. I was talking to Bruce Downs. He's busy. Our good friend Scott Martin, MFS Baits out east, he's busy. You're busy. That's refreshing. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, we're just about to start work on the summer issue of Just Fishing too. So we'll get that filled up with a bunch of good stuff for you.
Gord's he's a little partial. He's saying that's because Jim's jigs are the best.
Boom shakalaka.
Wow.
He's a good guy. He can catch fish, boy.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's no weekend angler.
Outside of tying jigs, what else have you been doing, my friend?
Well, we're working on the paper. We're just getting that started. Going to gather up some really good information for the summer, and should be a good time. There's lots of stuff there. Lots of people are looking at it and reading it as usual. But I gotta say, I was talking to somebody the other day, a buddy of mine. He said, "I bet you don't miss lugging a lot of those around like you used to." I said, "Not a chance. It's awesome." The only thing I do miss, though, and I talked to several people about this lately, and people in the industry, and we're really starting to miss the shows and the gatherings and that stuff. I see people out there all the time. They say, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this, I'm doing that," and then they're out there posting, they're all over the place, But my all over the place is shows and events and stuff like that, and that ain't happening. That ain't happening, eh?
You're right, Jim, and part of what Yvonne's going to be coming on here next Monday to talk about is exactly that, because I think everybody, including yourself, who count on those shows not only to make sure that you're engaging your audience and your fans, but it's also a means of making money. And when that's not there, you have to turn to alternative ideas. And Yvonne is doing exactly that for OWA, and I applaud her for doing it. And CFN is going to be there to help her. But as I said, it's a team effort. And listen, we cannot thank you enough. Even as busy as you are tying flies, that you set aside a half hour, 40 minutes each and every Monday for us, and did so twice last week.
My pleasure. It really is. It really is. It gives something back to me too,
Yeah, and I know you will talk about that to me, but off camera and whatever. And I know what this community means to you and what we do each Monday. But as I said, the amount of information, and that was really cool to be able to show you that video from the Linders last week, and you could tell you enjoyed it. It was a trip back.
I'd never seen that.
Yeah, I could tell.
I just missed it along the way, and it mesmerized me. It's been in my mind a few times. It's pretty cool. It's really cool.
So here we are this time of year. Obviously, walleye opener for some has already begun. I know you as a walleye angler, but you're more well known as a bass angler. But when it comes to walleye, Has this weather, this spring, been odd when it comes to weather? And where, if you were targeting walleye, would you tend to go? Close to or right on top of the spawning grounds?
I'd never go right on top of them, but I'd be close to them. And I mean, it's there's fish at all different stages right now. I talk to guys, they're all out here fishing in the river, and they say, oh, on the weekend, oh, well, they're not there, they're here, they're over there, they're doing this, they're doing whatever. The guys, all the fish are never doing the same thing at the same time.
Yeah,
they're never doing the same thing at the same time, and that's what what you're seeing, and it's you just have to remember that. But the whole thing is, after they fish, or after they spawn, if you're going to fish for them, in the most case, you have to fish slower. I'm not saying you can't catch one doing something fast, but if you can catch some fast, you'll catch more by being slow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that type of thing. And like I said, the number one thing was, you talk to a Lindner, and they'll tell you, well, obviously if you're in northwestern Ontario or a lot of places with smaller rivers and lakes, you're just going to be jig fishing, not as much trolling like in Quinte or the really big waters. Jig fishing is the deal. And they where it permits them to do it, they'll fish with an 8-ounce jig. That's what they'll fish with. They'll fish with something smaller because it forces you to fish slower to keep it on the bottom.
And I was just gonna, you're 100% right. And
that's the whole deal. I mean, a different thing. So you go down to fish the Detroit River where the water's going faster than most cars. Then you have to use a really heavy jig to get it down 20, 30 feet, or where you could be at 15 feet of water and it's still moving really fast. So you have to use heavier stuff. But
I was gonna ask you that because now that this spawn has happened, these fish, as hungry as they are, they're still tired. You're right. They've been working water that they don't normally swim in. They've been laying eggs, doing their thing. And as much as they want to put the feed bags on, they are tired and they won't chase, I find, as much as they will when it starts to really warm up. So is a vertical presentation the better approach? Like, would you get into a hair jig presentation at this stage, or would you wait?
Oh, yeah, you can fish a hair jig, any type of little swim bait, like a little rhythm wave, a twister tail, all that stuff, all the little plastic deals. A lot of guys fish with little flukes on jig heads, like especially in the Detroit River. They fish with a lot of stuff like that. But it's not just there; it's everywhere. You put it on top of there, and they bite it. But you got to do something that's going to force you to fish slow.
Gotcha.
That's the key. You know what I mean? And if you can get a little more on top of them, sometimes it can help too, because that keeps your line straight below them or straight below you. But that's not going to work if you're fishing in 10 feet of water.
Right.
Because you got to remember, 10 feet of water, I'm looking from here to the door, it's probably 12 or 14 feet. So that's how deep the water is. You're thinking the fish can't see you? Like they know. I mean, we've done this so many times. I'll take guys bass fishing, and we're out in 18 feet of water on the side of the weeds where it drops off into the main part of the lake. And they'll say, oh, this is awful deep. And I'll say, you're at the back of the boat, eh? You're sitting back there, yeah? How far away are you? I don't know, 18, 20 feet. Well, that's how far the fish are. But they're straight below you. You think they can't see you and they don't know you're there? That's, it's a whole deal. That's why quite often trolling or making long casts in really clear water will work, where in a river you can get away being more on top of them because there's the current. They tend to be a little bit murkier. And a lot of times in a river, too, you tend to fish deeper. Right. So it's, just as a basic rule of thumb, it's not a rule, a steadfast rule. But like you said, I'm a firm believer too. If it ain't working, don't keep doing it.
Amen. Speaking of that,
I got my shirt to prove it.
Yeah. Speaking of which, if you are someone that likes to use live bait, is this your season to present a jig and a minnow? Or,
yeah. Live bait is always I mean, I've been out a lot of days where one person will catch more fish than the other, and they're not a lot more, and they're not fishing with bait. Why? Because they were maybe doing something different with the jig that having live bait on. Like, you can't go rip jigging with live bait.
Mhm.
It's like it's an impossibility. You can't do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Stuff like that. So if the fish decide that they're going to hit a rip jig, it would probably have to be a little bit closer to the season. But like the warmer the water gets, like that. That's why it just shines in the summer and into the fall. But I'm never turning down a piece of live bait, guys. Never.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm turning down a piece of live bait if I don't have to. Got something here to show you, really cool. I got some of these in here. The new M60 MR, and this is like one of the coolest colors. Like that nice.
Wow.
That's one of the new jackals. See the orange tail?
Yeah.
And I'm not big on craw finishes, but some of this more muted and like I'm not a big natural finish guy either. Like having something look like a perch that doesn't really wind me up. It's not I caught too many fish before it, and I've caught too many fish since that I know I don't have to have something that looks like a perch. And why does everybody catch so many fish with a black jig or a white jig?
Yeah.
Or a pink and white one, or a plain gray head with a minnow on the back. You don't need stuff that looks totally real.
How important is, if you're using those kind of cranks, how important is it for you to pick one that has that black spot, that defining black spot on the side? Does that matter to you?
It seems to matter a lot more in the U.S.
Okay.
Because the shad have that distinct mark on them, and in a lot of cases, if I'm not mistaken, that's actually placed there as a decoy, because a lot of times it's at the back of the fish, and it's supposed to be mistaken by to be an eye, so they don't get eaten if they get chased by the tail. There's a lot less chance of them getting caught by the tail than there is by the head.
Right.
Because fish like to take stuff by the head if they can and swallow it.
Yeah.
But years ago, we saw about a, I don't forget how big it was. It was a stout fish though. It was a big thick fish, probably about maybe in the high 20s, a muskie, maybe 26, 28 pounds. And it had the head of like a 4-pound pike sticking out of its mouth, like in its throat. So it's just eating a 4-pound pike. And then I catch it on an 8-inch suet.
Come on.
The pike hasn't even disappeared down its throat. We were going to try and pull the pike out. We just thought we're not going to mess with nature, Like it was pointing the right way to come back out, so nothing's going to get caught, But we just left it, and we just kept the fish in the water. We were looking at it and unhooked it and let her go. We didn't even take pictures. That was a long time ago too. That was before that 100% care for those fish came into play, and I was still caring for them, 35, 40 years ago.
Now, that's an extreme, but obviously all of us have pulled fish out and they've spit out either crayfish or other minnows, something they had just eaten. It was even identifiable. I'm sure a lot of us could put up their hands and say that they've done that. Yours is a little bit on the extreme side, but it's funny because sometimes we say, "Oh, the fish are finicky. That they've been eating well." In this case, does that even matter?
I love it when you go out with guys and you're going along, and I look in the water and I say, "Look at all the minnows." Oh, well, we should get out of here because the fish are all full. A fish is never full. He's never full. He's eating till they're falling out his mouth, and then he's still trying to eat more. Why? Because he only gets a little bit of time to do that. And he digests his food something fiercely quick in the summertime.
Yeah.
Can be less than half a day. So they're cooking, they're eating. Where in the wintertime, it could be 2.5, 3 days or more for them to digest the food because they're cold-blooded. So their system is not running, eh?
Yeah.
But, fish are nuts. People go out on a warm summer day, and they feel lethargic because it's 90 degrees, and the fish are down there. Oh, boy, let's get warm. We love it. We're cold-blooded. The warmer it gets, the more we get to play. The faster, they're more hyped. You ever catch largemouth bass in the pads when it's like 90 degrees and sunny outside? And they're wild. They're jumping. They're all over the place, You catch them, 2, 3 weeks before the water starts getting really warm. They tussle around. It's fun. But, man, oh, man, that early August, once the water really gets warm and stuff gets hot, it's just not the same. Now, people mistake that with what we call the doldrums of late summer.
Yeah.
because there are times in the late summer where the inactivity or the activity of the fish seems to wane, but it doesn't mean you can't catch them. They're
No.
still digesting their food at an alarming rate.
True enough.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, I know, guys. I've had several occasions where fish have spit up small panfish, like crappies and bluegills and stuff like that, maybe twice the size of a tuna, and you've gone in the live well to get them, and you look in and go, whoa! And there's another 3 or 4 little fish swimming around in there. They've come out of those fish, they spit them up once you put them in the live well. So how many do they spit up when you just catch them and throw them back in? And
but and I'm sure this is a tip that everybody knows. When you do see that stuff laying in your live well, take a good look at it, because that might be the color and shape of presentation you want to be pitching next.
And it'll be the same thing every year. Like it doesn't change.
Yeah, absolutely.
They eat whatever they can get.
Well, and the thing is, like if you've ever fished a species of fish that has an incredible amount of forage available to it, and a perfect example, I was out with Paul Castellano on the Niagara River fishing for smallmouth, and it looked like these smallmouth had been pumped up, with a basketball pump. They're like 25 psi, and hungry. They shouldn't be hungry. I don't know how they're swimming or moving, just because of how just enormous. Like
when they're done spawning, Scotty, they come out of the spawn, they hang out for a few days, then they open their mouth and they swim around till November. That's basically what they do.
Yeah,
they're looking to eat that whole time, whatever, whenever, as much as they can get, and then as the fall comes on, their mouth's still wide open. They're just not moving as quickly or as far to get food. Yeah. That's why quite often, once again, you go back to the fall, you have to fish a little slower. And the fish are they have what they call a strike window. And in the middle of the summertime when the fish are hot, like the lure can land 10 feet away from the fish. I mean, I've seen pads just erupt 10 feet away, and that's the fish sitting on the surface. Here's your lure land. And that's his tail swishing as he takes off, and you see the pads all move. He gets there and kaboom. He goes right there. I've seen that. Yeah,
who just got shivered?
Did you see the video I posted the other day? I shared again of the largemouths eating the bluegills off the guy's line. He ties them on. He puts the line through their lip, and he ties them on, and he casts them out. I don't know where that pond is, but I put up some serious shekels for a day in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even with no hooks, just to go play.
Absolutely, no kidding. Yeah. Sean's asking about frogs. Now, I'm assuming you're talking if a bass spits a frog out, do you use it as bait? Obviously, as we all know, I don't believe you can use frogs anymore in the province of Ontario.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not in for putting anything on a hook that tries to take the hook back out of itself.
That is true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so there's that. But yeah, that's a good question, Sean. I don't know if frogs are allowed to be used anymore in Ontario.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know who will know? Jason Barnucz. So we'll get to
he'll know for sure. Yep.
He'll get that for sure. And I don't see him nodding or saying yes, but I'm assuming when we get to his segment, yes, it's illegal. Okay, fair enough. Well, we'll talk about it.
Now, is it illegal to use them or illegal to sell them?
I did both. At this stage, probably right now, both.
Yeah.
Okay. You wouldn't be able to sell them if, in fact, they weren't allowed to be used.
Thank God for Kiera's.
Yeah.
That's what I tried to explain to a guy the other day. He says, I bought some frogs. He said, they're rubber ones. He doesn't fish much. He says, so you really think a fish is going to eat these? So I sent him a picture of a Kiera that I took really close up of the body, and it's just scoured from end to end with rake marks. You know, bass's teeth are like sandpaper. They just scratch it and scratch it. And I've got some pike on this one, or had pike hit it apparently, because there's some god-awful gashes in it too. But I sent it to him and I showed it to him, and he says, oh, do you rough it up like that, like with sandpaper or something? I said, no, that's from bass's teeth. And he says, oh, like he was like absolutely shocked that somebody could catch bass on a plastic frog, that they would get tricked. And I said, well, it's not that they get tricked, it's the movement. They're just chasing something that's moving.
Yeah.
it's splashing across the top there, and it's just, what did they get to eat yesterday? Well, yesterday they might have eaten a real frog, and I don't think for a second that a bass looks up and goes, "Oh, there's a frog." Like, it's just, there's something alive. Let's get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We got a few people weighing in here in regards to the frogs. Rick saying only northern leopard frogs are able to use. Jason saying frogs are legal, but there are restrictions, so stay tuned. We'll find out more. Jim, as always, my friend, I know you've been busy. I know you've been tired. You've got lots that's still ahead of you, and we look forward to the magazine and looking at maybe some of your new renditions of Big Jim's jigs. But, dude, thanks so much. You've been busy with CFN as well, and we can't thank you enough, my friend.
It's always good, guys, and I'll let you know as soon as I find out about Al.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, because they're right in the middle. I already saw one of the blurbs that they did on Angling Buzz with the white bass, and that's when we thought we might have them, and then they got called away. The bite's on.
Yeah,
I mean,
right on.
These guys are lindners, They wake up in the morning and they go, "Oh, the white bass are biting in Nebraska."
Gotta go.
Load it up. We're gone. Yeah. No. Cool.
I get it.
Okay, guys.
All right, now, buddy. You take care.
Have a wonderful night. Be safe.
Absolutely. As always, a pleasure to hear from Jim. We're a lucky bunch, I tell you. Lucky bunch. Anyway, I just want to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors before we bring in Lawrence. It is the Big One Cut Bait Company. We're very proud to have you a part of us, and we're looking forward to our salmon season, which is just around the corner. So if you are looking for cut bait, Alewife in particular, this is the company that you want to get in touch with. Lawrence Gunther in the house.
That was short and sweet, that little ad there, eh?
And sometimes that's all it needs to be, right? A lot could be said in 5 seconds. I remember my father, a lot could be said in like one look, one little quirk of the eye, or, the finger, the dreaded finger.
Would know about that.
Enough. Yeah, that said an absolute enough.
I'm oblivious.
Now you have come to us, and we've been talking muskie because you've had the Muskie Odyssey, and then just recently there was another muskie show on this past weekend. I can't think of the name, and Symposium. Thank you.
Yeah.
So muskie is definitely on the brain, and something that I learned during the Muskie Odyssey was, of course, the population, and I would say a very healthy population of muskie in the St. John River in the province of New Brunswick. Now you're here to tell us a lot more in regards to those muskie and how they might be endangered, or at least pursued to the point of endangerment.
Yeah, so I interviewed this wonderful researcher. She's working with the University of New Brunswick, a research team there, and she really she started in salmon. She's now doing muskie research. She really gets this stuff, and it was just absolutely a wonderful conversation we had on Bluefish Radio. But what I learned from that, and what I've been, doing my research over the years on this, and it goes back 60 years, Scotty. Like 60 years ago, some headwaters associated with the St. John River in Quebec, in the province of Quebec, a pond, a small lake, was stocked with muskellunge by the province of Quebec. And those muskie, took to that pond. They liked it, and they took hold, and they expanded their population base, and they started working their way down into another river that ultimately led to the St. John River, that made its way through parts of Maine, United States, and then into New Brunswick, and they are now well established in the St. John River in New Brunswick. Now, it's not good news to the conservation people who want to, bring back Atlantic salmon. The St. John River was a vital throughway for migrating Atlantic salmon to get to the different watersheds, the spawning habitat, just like the Miramichi River. Those are the two big ones in New Brunswick for Atlantic salmon. So they like the Atlantic salmon conservation people, they say, well, here's something that's eating Atlantic salmon, and they're spreading this news, but they had no science.
I
So how do
was
you
just going
conquer
to
that?
say, I didn't mean to, I didn't, and I don't mean to interrupt by any means,
Yeah.
Lawrence. But you know
Yeah.
what? During that Odyssey and the segment about the St. John River, they had actually taken some muskie out and cut open their stomachs and found no trout in something like 41 different specimens that they had targeted. So
I don't know if they cut the stomachs or if they stick a straw down there and they suck the stomach contents out, like when they're an overdose victim. I'm not.
you're right. I should
Yeah.
correct myself. They examine the stomach contents. So whether they actually
Exactly.
cut open the fish or not, you're 100% right.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Yeah, but you're right, and they've done 3 of these surveys. I think the first one was in 1999, and then 2007, and then another one after that. And all these researchers, independent scientists, said I think the most they found was 3% of the stomach content was made up of Atlantic salmon. But they said, based on that and the studies they've done, there's no way the muskie in the St. John River are contributing to the suppression of the Atlantic salmon population. It's not happening. So that science was able to dispel that rumor, right? So you would think, okay, all right, so it's not the muskie's fault, but they're still not liked. There's still that sort of lingering perception amongst people and regulators and the salmon folk that the muskellunge are a problem. And they're still doing things like below a dam by a fish ladder where Atlantic salmon congregate. They remove regularly 60 muskie are taken out of that area every year. They're just called, by the government officials. They catch them, they kill them, they take them out. And then if you look at the regulations for you can catch a muskie between, I think, 5 inches and 60 inches, and you can keep 5 a day all year round. Now that doesn't sound like a viable, sustainable regulation in terms of maintaining a fish stock, right? I mean, 5 fish a day, 365 days a year of any size, and they just have to be musky. That's
Almost,
a call. That's a call.
It almost seems like it's a different language. No offense to any linguistics out there, but it almost sounds like you're speaking a different language when you say you're allowed to keep 5 muskie, when really out this way, all we are doing is pushing the importance of releasing these fish and the care of these fish while they're in our possession. So yeah, it's hard to grasp, hard to understand, but obviously where is the root of this conflict, if you will?
It's the salmon people. They really want the salmon to come back, right? They're really working on rehabilitating spawning habitat, building fish ladders, rebuilding dams. One of the big dams on the St. John River, they're going to just take it out. They was built. It's over 50 years old. It's past. It's a dam, a big concrete dam. They can only last 50 years, and then you have to either thoroughly rehabilitate them with lots of expensive renovations, or you take them out. And in this case, it produces such a little amount of power. The cost of replacing that power that produces with more sustainable, renewable resources to produce electricity are far cheaper than the price tag of rebuilding this dam. So they're just taking that dam out. That's good news. That's good news for the salmon. And so there's lots of hope that the salmon will come back. And you look at what's going on down in Maine, and a lot of dams and watersheds being opened up again to Atlantic salmon. And remember, these are fish. They go up the river, they spawn, and they come back down. Like, they don't die. So these are more delicate kind of fish. They're not the hardy Chinook and coho that we think of in Lake Ontario or the West Coast. That just go up, spawn, die, get eaten by bears, fertilize the trees and all that stuff. These fish go up, they spawn, they come back down, and they can do this for multiple years. So you don't get a lot. They don't make a lot of eggs because they just count on being able to do this over and over again. So it's a little bit of a more delicate population for sure. You have to treat them a little bit more with kit gloves. But Scotty, if they get their way, like if the scientists can't convince the regulators that, hey, there's no need for you to be doing this. So what they've done in the meantime, like Muskie Canada and the chapter down there, and a guy named Marlon Prince, and others, they've invited TV hosts and Muskie Canada competitions from Ontario to come down and put on little friendly tournaments, and all sorts of TV shows and news magazine articles have been written about the muskie fishery. So now all of a sudden, it's the newest, hottest place to go catch muskie, right? So now you got that happening. You've got people traveling there with their boats and their cars and their trucks and all that stuff and their money. And this isn't just like a tiny little season. These people come in when the muskie season opens, or early in the season, because it's open all year, and they fish in the summer and they fish right through to the fall. So, if you think about tourism in on the East Coast, it's really July and August, because that's the only 2 warm months of the year. The rest of it's kind of rainy and crappy. So now, but muskie anglers, they don't mind that. I mean, we fish in the rain, right? So this adds to that tourism timeline. It stretches it out on the elbows, kind of thing, on the shoulders. So it's a plus. But the one thing they're worried about is that, they've done some surveys now about muskie fishing pressure, and they see it's growing every year. And they think it will be very soon now, if the regulations stay the way they are, that the mortality rate of the muskie population in the St. John River will be 30%. That means 30% of the fish will die every year.
Wow.
Caught, released, harvested, whatever. They'll die 30%. And you can't sustain a population of muskie because, these aren't like goldfish. They don't just spawn all the time. They spawn once every couple of years or when they feel like it. So yeah, it's not going to go. They got to sort of ratchet down the regulations, and they're taking now the politicians out fishing, and they're introducing them to these muskie anglers and their money, and showing them the articles and say, look, tourism, look, money flowing in. You can wait for the salmon to come back and keep the place totally pristine, like an empty room in a hotel. Or you can say, hey, we've got these other guests here. They're called muskie, and look at all the anglers they're bringing in, and the money and the resources and the tourism dollars. So yeah, the politicians are getting on side. So you add up all these ducks in a row, and you get to that tipping point where now muskie, they're no longer considered invasive. Now everyone's calling them non-native.
Interesting that you say that, because that's a point that we're going to bring Jay in to talk about, that we had great discussion in our legacy members. But just to further what you're saying, during the Muskie Odyssey, we saw that the premier of the province of New Brunswick jumped on with the kind of support that you don't normally see from politicians when it comes to fisheries and species-based fisheries. He had a real resounding commitment towards the muskie and helping Muskies Canada, maintain and protect that fishery. And that fishery, what a fishery it is. Anybody who loves muskie, who has have fished there, they have seen the girth size of these fish. These just aren't muskie. These are muskie on steroids. They're very thick, very well fed. They're probably perhaps a genetic strain within themselves, because they're really a unique muskie, and just the sheer size of them, like the width of them. And I know a lot of muskie professionals who have been targeting these fish for many years would suggest that they might even be the healthiest of them all, of all muskie. But you're 100% right. Something that the scientists talked about during the Odyssey, as well as biodiversity and having to spread out the food web amongst all that diversity, that when a top predator starts to diminish in numbers, there's other fish that step in and perhaps won't allow a muskie to improve itself or maintain it. What it'll actually do is those fish species will take up the gap of those muskie that have been removed from the system, and it's very hard to get the muskie back in, because now all of the other chain of food below them have made up the gap. So it's a ticking time bomb if in fact they continue to harvest at the levels they are, because as we know, muskie are not the greatest fish on sustaining themselves.
It's so true. It's so true. And when you have a Muskie Canada Inc., like a organization with 600 members, all these chapters, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, New Brunswick, and they're all promoting catch and release. And if you want to keep something, it's got to be over 54 inches or pushing that. I think they like to push that because, maybe someone wants to keep that fish because it's a world record fish and they want to have that credit. So, they catch a 59 to 60 inch fish or something like that. They said, well, you know what, I need to bring this in to get weighed and measured, and it's because it's a world record. So they want to have that opportunity to do that. Oh, and maybe even get a skin mount done. There's still people that do that. So yeah, so you can keep one over 54, and that's happening more and more across Canada. But they want to see that in the St. John River too. So there's the anglers themselves are saying, we don't need this. We don't need to harvest all these fish and eat them. We're not interested in that. We want to eat fish. There's lots of other types of fish we can eat, but it's not these ones. That's not what these fish are intended for. And it's not why people come here. They don't come here to harvest 5 and fill their coolers and bring them home, right? That's not the species.
Well, and really, I mean, not that we would condone the eating of a muskie, and if you have a license and the ability to possess one, there's no shame in it if you do. But I don't know too many people who have consumed muskie. And out there, I don't believe that is the desired wish either. But I have to ask you this, because we're kind of dancing around the issue, Lawrence, in regards to where does this end? Like, once you target muskie, what's the next species that we're going to target that are taking away the Atlantic salmon? Like, where does it end?
Well, striped bass, you look up the Miramichi River and Jeff Wilson there, and the struggle he's having with the Atlantic salmon folks. They want to get rid of the striped bass out of that Miramichi River, or just reduce their numbers, because these are fish that overwinter in the river, and they're afraid that they're gobbling up the salmon smolts in the spring on their way down, and making a big meal out of them before they head back into the ocean, head south, or head around, or take off out of the river, finish their spawn. So yeah, you got the Atlantic salmon folks saying, hey, open up the striped bass commercial fishery again. It's been open twice before, and both times it crashed the population. So, you want to try that a third time? You think it's the third time lucky? Probably not. And then you've got smallmouth bass, right? In all the lakes now in Atlantic Canada, you never had smallmouth bass there 20 years ago. And they've been brought in by people, they call them the White Bucket Brigade, and they bring them in and they release them into these lakes. And now they're saying they're being accused of eating the Atlantic salmon, and they want to add poison to the Miramichi River and kill off the smallmouth populations in those areas. So yeah, there's no end to this, man. There's no end. Like, when does a fish get the right to survive? That's what I want to know. Like, when does a fish species, non-native, invasive, just stumbled into the area, how it got there, at what point is it considered a homesteader? What does it actually get to own the river or the lake?
It's a really good question, and I think at this point, before we do though, were the striped always in the Miramichi?
Always, they're native. They're native.
So on that note, let's bring in Jay, because this was a hotly contested conversation piece amongst our legacy chat, and I forget if it was Steve or if it was Walter that brought up the subject. But at what point are we talking invasive and non-native fish, Jay? Like, is it the same thing, or are they completely different?
Geez, it really depends on the negative impacts of those species. So invasive is a fish that comes in. It could be introduced. It could come in on its own. So there's examples that I was just looking at. Dude, the hamster is like flying off the wheel here. So in Lower Algonquin Park, there's lakes where northern pike has come into Algonquin, in Booth Lake, which is just down the slope from Lake Opeongo. Northern pike haven't been in there before. Okay, they're naturally invaders. Flathead catfish, which we've talked about on this show before, that have been seen in the Thames River, they've naturally invaded from the Maumee River in Ohio. That's what. Well, nothing's definitive, but these are the best guesses from some of the best in the field. Okay, so invasive is a problematic species. Naturalized is a different term, where we look at something's been here for X amount of time. and it's naturalized. The habitat has, it's a naturally occurring fish. The habitat's adjusted to that fish. Common carp is probably the classic North American fish that is defined as naturalized. It's still a problem fish species in some locations. Like, it roots up wetlands. It destroys wetlands. Like, I love carp fishing, but it is a menace to wetland systems. Okay. And, and are we willing to jeopardize, we can't get rid of the carp, but we have to manage carp in some places, because if we don't, we're going to lose wetland habitats. So we're going to lose spawning areas for bass, northern pike, and other wetland species. Right. So, all of this is about fisheries management and how we manage it. Think about and I'm reading a paper right here because you guys had me thinking about it. So the paper you guys are referencing, the source of muskellunge, is the Stosek et al. Paper from I don't even know what year, 1999. And it breaks down the history of muskellunge in the St. John River, where they are introduced in the headwaters in a couple of lakes by folks from Quebec. It was the Quebec Ministry of the Environment that stocked them. 3,000 fingerlings, and then they slowly just worked their way downriver. And, this comes down to regulation. What people are upset about is there's no regulation on muskellunge because they want them to be harvested, right? It's a fisheries management tool. But Muskies Canada folks that are out there are pushing for catch and release, which they do everywhere. Like, I don't care, even if you're in Ontario where you can keep muskies. Muskies Canada is pushing for non-retention. Don't keep any, right?
Jason,
Yeah.
we were talking, like, you mentioned something, like, what's that X year? Like, that Abby I was interviewing, she said there's some law in the book in New Brunswick about terrestrial animals that once they establish themselves in a forest and they've been there 50 years, you can no longer try to exterminate them, whether it's a bird species or a squirrel or a marmot or whatever it is. 50 years, as she said, was the number. She wasn't absolutely definitive, but is that what it is? Does that apply to fish now as well? Like, if a fish gets in there, those smallmouth are there for 50 years, or those muskie have been there now 60 years in that.
I think that I think it's a slippery slope with that, to make that a rule. Because, for example, look what I just said about common carp, right? So if we say that common carp are naturalized, and we can't
over 100 years,
we can't take drastic means to control them. But in some places, if we don't control them, we're going to lose other things. You see what I'm saying?
We have done that, like Hamilton Harbor. That whole wetlands in there, they fenced it off, and they exterminated all the common carp on the inside of that fence, and they left just a massive pile of dead common carp on the shore.
Well,
and they got away with it.
Well, a lot of that is how it was disposed of. Like,
not well.
I'm in a line of work where sometimes work gets dirty. Okay. I've had to review papers, and I participated in workshops on proper euthanasia of fish, proper disposal of fish. It happens. Like, we are asked to do things. Like, even if there's a big fish kill and I have to go do a cleanup, how do we get rid of those fish? We can't dump them on a farmer's field. They got to go to a landfill site. There's procedures in place. So some of the bad press that came out of Hamilton Harbor was because of how those carp were disposed of. Okay, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I wasn't involved in it. Wasn't who I work with. It was I don't even know who it was.
Yeah, but it was some sort of botanical organization.
Yeah, there was a picture of it, came out of the Royal Botanical Gardens, I think. Yeah, and so they have to manage those carp, because if those carp get into Coots Paradise, and there's still carp in Coots Paradise, like, they will have to manage that wetland to protect it from carp for eternity. It's like sea lamprey. You turn off the lamprey control switch, bye lake trout.
Yeah. $20 million a year, right? $20 million a year to keep that population down 90% every year. But here, Ducks Unlimited is getting into this game now, because, like you said, they would tear up wetlands. So now there's a bay on the Ottawa River here called Lockerbie Bay. Yeah. And Ducks Unlimited made a deal with the hunting club there, who owns that bay or all the land around it, to put up a sort of a sandbar at the mouth of the bay. And then when the water level drops, the carp can't get in there. And it's sort of a natural deterrent to keep the carp from getting in there when the ducks are in there, nesting, right? Because it's a huge sort of wetlands. The ducks love nesting in there, so it keeps the carp out. You know what else it did? It in the wintertime, we had that big, heavy ice in 2019.
Yeah.
So the ice was 3-4 feet deep. The ice pinched right down onto that sandbar, and that bay itself is maybe 8 feet deep. So you had now 3-4 feet of ice on top of in 8 feet of water. Now you only got 4 feet of water left underneath there. It ran out of oxygen, and because there was no current getting into that bay anymore, because the sandbar was pinched off, and the ice had just pinched off any possibility of current getting into that bay. And when the ice melted, all the fish in that bay were dead.
Well, and see, so in that situation, I'm not justifying what they did, but in that situation, like, we have to get creative with how we manage these things. Like, they try to keep carp out of a wetland for obvious reasons. They're not trying to kill carp. They're just trying to manage carp to protect their wetland. I've done a lot of work with Ducks Unlimited over the years because they manage a lot of wetlands that have a lot of fish, and sometimes ducks and fish don't get along when it comes to management. What's good for ducks is not always good for fish, and this could be said for any animals out there. It's an ecosystem approach, which is hard to do. In this situation, Lawrence, I wonder if they tried it. It didn't work out. Well, the question would be is, what are we going to do to mitigate so it doesn't happen again, right? Because
it's the same. It's the same because it was considered an anomaly with the thickness of the ice, right? And the length of the winter. That ice didn't melt quick. So it was just, and then usually it's near the end of the ice season when they run out of oxygen, and then that's when you have these die-offs. And they weren't carp that died in there. They were bass and muskie and perch and all the panfish, and all those fish species. So it was sad, but that's it's hasn't really recovered. The bass fishing in there hasn't really recovered. But I think they're going to keep doing this. I talked to the Ducks Unlimited people about this, and they're going to continue to do this strategy because it's a low cost sort of permanent way to create natural barriers to carp.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to things like that, it's hard to manage different. Everyone, these all stakeholders are at the table, right? So. And in this situation, Lawrence, it's probably you're also dealing with Parks Canada because it's along the Rideau system. So you have Fisheries and Oceans Canada, you have MNRF at the table, you're going to have Ducks Limited at the table.
Quebec,
all these stakeholders all have to manage what's going on. They all have different interests, although all their interests are great. A lot of times they're not on the same wavelength. And so, I know for me being in the science realm, it is such a challenge some days when I walk into a boardroom where I'm asked to figure out with my team, and I work for scientists and I work with technicians, and we have to answer questions scientifically to help to use science to better manage different things. And wetlands is a great one because we've come into situations where we've had to manage a wetland that was built for ducks, but it's not doing so well for fish. And we actually came to the table, and my whole thing is about I try to be positive, right? Like, I can see sometimes I walk in these boardrooms, guys, and the science guy gets called in last. There's already blood on the table. Okay, I'm in there with my mopping up the blood because the stakeholders have been throwing knives at each other for months or years. And I've come in and said, okay, look, let's try and come up with a scientific solution here to answer different people's concerns and see if what has happened here. And then once we have data, then we can come up with a mitigation plan. So how can we mitigate what's happening? So in the case of what's happening at that wetland, maybe we have to develop some sort of control structure. Like, that's probably what they wanted to do. In a lot of cases for wetland management, Ducks Unlimited, Delta Waterfowl, and these are all great associations. I'm not a duck hunter, but the hunting communities does wonders for wetland and just wetland and terrestrial conservation. Okay. But sometimes they want to do things their way to protect ducks. It doesn't always work well for fish. There's always, I believe, there's always a way in the middle. We got to find a way.
I agree. We just have to. We can't let one group just rule, like the salmon people on the East Coast, because I think at some point, you have a fish population, and at some point, it has some rights to exist, right? Like, I know if it just comes in, like there's that lake just like last week is in the news in, I think, Colorado. It's a reservoir full of trout. Pike got in there. They found a pike. So now they're draining the reservoir to kill all the pike. make
Yeah,
sure
and
there's none in there.
So and I've been involved in fish kills purposely to try and kill off like ponds full of goldfish. I was involved in the round goby roundup on Lake Simcoe in 2005.
Wow.
And that was kind of a tough project to be involved with. But you know what? To see so many different agencies come to the table for a common cause, the goby still made it into Lake Simcoe, but that was a real eye opener for me about when you get an invasive species and you try and control it. Good luck getting it out once it's in there. But there's a lake. I want to say something though about how we as anglers, we can change the tide. We can change the tide and how this is all done. And I'm going to give you an example. Steelhead. Steelhead in Southern Ontario, if you talk to any steelhead experts out there, I'm a jack of all trades biologist. Trust me. I'm a well-read on everything but master of none, okay? Except for maybe rare fish that you guys have never heard of. So I'm not going to go there. But a lot of my colleagues who are steelhead aficionados will tell you that our limit of 2 fish is way too high. In fact, our limit of 1 fish in some water bodies is too high. How can we beat the system? How can we cheat the system to have better fishing? Just don't keep any. And I know there's people on this call right now that are probably like, what? I can't keep any fish? Listen, you want a better fishery? Don't keep your allowable possession limit. Even look at all the talks we've had on this show about possession limits, and catch limits and how they're just too darn high. Right.
Well, and Jason, I totally agree. Like if you could drive to a body of water, if you live in a major city and you can drive to that body of water and fish and then drive home the same day, so can probably a million other people. Right. And then you think, whoa, man, is that such a good idea to have the same limit on that body of water as another body of water that's, say, 3 hours away from that city where people are maybe plan a special weekend trip, and it's not nearly the kind of pressure that these 100%. Nearby water bodies have.
So let's go back to the St. John River muskellunge.
Yeah.
If the majority of muskie anglers there care about the muskie and they're not harvesting them and they're letting them go, there's no regulation on them. Are they being penalized for releasing muskies? Are they going to jail or fined? I'm asking an honest question.
I don't know. It was brought up during the Odyssey, and I don't believe people had a question. It's interesting though, because in some cases, depending on what species you back, you're frowned upon. And much as social media can be a negative experience for some, if you are doing release videos that we try to promote the crap out of here on CFN, sometimes you get those angry faces and those snide comments.
Yeah, so don't throw them back, kill them like.
You know what? I even tell Trevor some days, we're not doing the 5-star video today. We're not going to videotape what we're doing today. Because, like, even let's think about COVID, okay? I know I share a lot of content, but I also am careful what I share because I feel bad. I feel guilty being able to fish as much as I do, okay? It's a fine line. So for muskie anglers in the St. John, they can go there and they can appreciate these fish. They can educate their peers. I feel bad that they're almost like it seems like they're like a backdoor cult, like meeting in the alleys, No one likes us. but they can be the master of their domain, right? So if they aren't going to be penalized for keeping big muskies, don't keep them. Just let them go.
I don't know. I don't know. You'd have to. They know, they've done a survey. And there are people keeping the fish because they said there's a mortality rate that's creeping up to 30%. And that's just not, fish that are dying after they've been released. These are fish obviously being harvested. And there are people who are harvesting fish. I know people that eat muskie. I in different spots. Even on the Otto River, you can keep muskie over 30 inches and eat them. On the same river where we have a 54-inch keep rate. So there's, for sure there's, there used to be a commercial muskie fishery on the Ottawa River where they used big nets and they caught them commercially and sold them. And there's recipes, pickled muskie recipes. So it's there. It is happening. I just think that, at some point we need to decide that, and we should, and not by a certain species. We should just decide in general that if a fish, it gets established, it can no longer be treated in certain ways, right? It has the right to spawn without harassment. It has the right to access habitat. It has the right to be, regulated in a way that will not threaten its sustainability. And instead of what Gord Pizer calls pulse fishing, which is what we do now, because we have no idea how many fish we're taking out of a lake. So we hear about a lake and it's hot. So everyone shows up because we all spread the news. We tell someone and they tell someone and blah, blah, blah. And then we fish it for a year or 2 or 3, and the fishing quality drops off and drops off and drops off. And then all of a sudden someone else says, man, did you fish that lake, Lake X? Oh yeah, it's hot. And we switch to Lake X. And now Lake Y, the lake we were fishing, is now resting because everyone thinks, it's kind of dead. It's no good fishing there. And we didn't fish it out. We just fished it to the point where it wasn't fun anymore. So now Lake Y rests for 2 or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years until some angler stumbles in there and he goes, man, Lake Y's on fire. And everyone shows up back at Lake Y again. So we pulse our way through these lakes, and we have the ability to do that in Ontario. But if you live near an urban area, you can't do it. We can't just regulate like that and think people are just going to rotate naturally from one water body to another. It doesn't work when you have a lot of people interested in fishing and be able to do it and drive, like even ice anglers, right? Look at the numbers of ice huts out there. Yeah. I think we need to have a slightly better system that's a little more thought out and based on reality.
Well, there's a couple things to comment on. So, who loves lake sturgeon?
To eat?
No, just love them. I love them. Yeah. Did you not see that almost 7-foot lake sturgeon?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why. So that girl who was in the picture, okay, she was on the news, on the Detroit news. I wanted to ask her, why didn't you cuddle with that sturgeon? Because I fully would have put my leg over that fish and like snuggled right up to that. Dude, I'm 6'3". That thing's longer than me. Yeah. That's amazing.
It was huge.
But let's think about lake sturgeon for a minute. They were almost gone.
Yeah, they were.
Right? So should we care about lake sturgeon? Like, sometimes we start to not care about certain species because they're conflicting with species we like. I'm not taking side of salmon. I'm not taking side of muskellunge. I'm just saying, where do we draw the line? And I think drawing lines is hard to do because ecosystems change, right? Like global climate change is great for bass. Never mind stocking them in new places. They love it because the lakes get warmer. It's really hard on lake trout and brook trout and cold water species.
But then, Jason, what you're saying is doesn't matter what we do, we're not going to be able to manage that and make it better. And I know you're a scientist, and I know you've done lots of this, and it's successful management. And we do that, and we successfully manage bodies of water through adding fish and taking fish away. And a friend of mine told me about a lake near Ottawa. It had an excessive pumpkin seed population. So they had a sanctioned event where everyone caught as many pumpkin seeds as they could, and they filled up 55-gallon barrels with them. And then they had a cook, and it really put a big dent on the pumpkin seed population in the lake, and the walleye recovered. The walleye recovered in that lake. So I'm not saying that it has to be black and white, but I think we really need to say, instead of us doing things like that, like where we add fish and take fish away or change the species, like we did in the Great Lakes with the Pacific salmon, there should be some rules that we should say, okay, these are the rules in general that we shouldn't be crossing unless you've got or we just shouldn't be crossing. We shouldn't be playing God.
I think the term is we need to stick with the term adaptive management, based on knowledge that we have. We make the right decisions. And I'm the first one to say that, I've been involved in projects that our first decision wasn't the right one because we did more research and we got more data. Reading on the muskellunge in the St. John River, if they're not feeding on Atlantic salmon, they're not, and it's showing that either their stomach contents, I wouldn't even use stomach contents. I think that's an archaic way of doing things. I would actually use stable isotopes. Now, although you have to kill muskies to do that, stable isotopes can give you, I think, a better signal. And what isotopes are is, let's say we find out that Atlantic salmon are eating a certain type of insect or a prey fish that has a high nitrogen content. I'm trying to really kind of make this in plain language.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you do is you take tissue from a muskie and you test it for that nitrogen concentration. And by doing that, by using stable isotopes, you can really drill into food webs. You can figure out what's eating what. They've done that with lake trout and herring and populations in the Great Lakes. It's been a wonderful tool. And so, I still think that for muskies Canada, I would be encouraging some of this work.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would be saying, yeah, let's I don't want to call bluff here, but I would be encouraging it. If I'm that confident that my muskellunge, and I love the thought of these big muskies in New Brunswick, I would be working with the agencies to see if they could make this happen.
I agree. I'm not against science, but I'm just saying those fish have been there now almost 60 years. Maybe so they should just not try to beat the crap out of them anymore and let them be.
I think for some people though, Lawrence, they just won't let the dead horse lay, man. That horse is a skeleton in the pasture, and they're still flogging it with a stick.
It's wrong,
dude. That's the trouble. Look at common carp, 100 years, and we're still complaining about them.
And we still call them garbage fish. And over in England, they're king. In England, they're king, and here they're garbage.
Yeah,
agreed.
That's what I'm saying. Like people just won't let it go. That's the trouble. So you might as well just try and use science to try and answer some of the unknown questions that are still out there. We'll never answer all the questions.
No, I agree. Science is there, but I think you're right too, Jason and Scotty. We need to also step up as anglers and say, hey, that's not right. That's just not right.
I 100% agree. You see it as you just mentioned with your bluegill population. Anglers took it upon themselves to create a derby that would diminish their numbers. I see it all the time with pike derbies. I mean, really, they're the only reason they run is to try and eradicate their numbers. And it makes sense in certain water bodies. Like you think of the Kawarthas. No one wants to talk about it, but there's pike everywhere. And they're not supposed to be there. So, as I say, anything we can do as anglers to introduce new ideas on how to prepare them, how to cook them, how to make them palatable for other people, other anglers, is all part and parcel to creating this balance, finding that balance. And I really, at the end of the day, what else can we do? Let's just be more respectful, not just throw them all in a 45-gallon barrel or in a big heap on the ground and figure out what to do with them later. That's what I think. They're fish. All fish should be treated equally to some degree, right? We shouldn't have this trash, non-trash kind of mentality, this black and white kind of mentality when we deal with fish. It's we're not gonna. We might be winning the game, but we're losing the war. Well, you're right. Now, speaking of losing the war, this is to your point, Lawrence, in regards to finding that balance. But you have all these top predators, whether they're the salmon species, whether they're the striped bass, whether they're the smallmouth, whether they're the muskie. At what point does the forage begin to collapse in the St. John River? Because you're talking like these. You see some of these pictures of these striped bass. You see how thick the muskie are in that body of water. At what point is there not enough food?
They say they've done measurements on this, and they say the apex predator, the population will stabilize, and then balance will happen. But then if you take that apex predator out, the prey below that, their population explodes. So you look at Yellowknife, right? Or the Yellowstone, that whole Yellowstone area, conservation area, they took the wolves out. So then you had a whole boom of elk population. And the elk graze the riverbanks and eat back the bushes and the trees. So now the rivers, those beautiful trout rivers, have no more cover because the elk have browsed it all away. And because there's so many of them, and they're so lazy because there's nothing that threatens them, so their numbers keep growing, and they keep eating anything they can get their little teeth on, and that's every piece of greenery that's within 10 feet of the ground. So now the rivers are warming up because there's no more shade. So what they did, they brought the wolves back. The wolves put the spurs to the elk, got the elk population under control. The greenery came back. And the natural balance of nature was restored. So taking those apex predators out causes all sorts of population explosions. And Art Geaton explained this to me 10 years ago when we took 90% of the shark out of the ocean. We have massive population explosions that just ripple their way down the food chain and just cause endless chaos.
Yeah. And really, you know, the way we are commercially fishing fish, you know, we need these explosions. Not that I would ever encourage the removal of shark, but you know, that's a whole nother topic that we've discussed at great length. Gentlemen, I listen, I could sit here all friggin' night and listen to this. You guys
Thanks, Jason.
have
No problem. Anytime.
Lawrence, I'm gonna let you go because we still have a couple things that we want to talk to Jay about.
Yeah,
so
thanks, Scotty, for bringing Jason in. I've and for letting him answer some of these questions I had. Really good, man.
Always enjoy it.
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence. You have yourself a great
guys.
day. Now, before Jay and I talk even more, let's have a word from his sponsor.
The fear of failure is failure itself. The world of science rewards the ones who are willing to try and fail. Because without the courage to embrace failure, ideas remain ideas. But with that courage to fail and to learn, ideas can change the world. Well,
Jay, listen, that kind of exchange, you know, and people's opinions and beliefs, their emotions sometimes get involved. And it's great to see that we can have that kind of exchange with you guys and it remain civil, because listen, a topic like that can go off the rails, and you have been a part of many.
You know what's funny, dude, is that today I was working on a PowerPoint presentation about my job for grade 2s.
Wow.
And so today I've had to, like, fish are fun. What is habitat? Fish need food. You know, I like sturgeon. You know, like all this stuff, and then so to kind of get into a good healthy science fish discussion is kind of nice, because I've been trying to have to dumb down my science, you know, to grade 2s. But I think grade 2s will be the toughest audience I got going. So they're going to be a tough crowd.
Yeah, they can be, absolutely. But you know, on that subject, and we're talking about science. Yeah. This is something that you and I have talked about at great length, the importance of releasing those large walleye. And this comes from a segment that Bruce Tufts was involved with. You shared with me, and all it does is reinforce what we already know.
The biggest thing about walleye live release that I think a lot of anglers don't realize, if you harvest a walleye, I don't care what lake it's from, if you harvest a walleye before it spawns once, you are killing your own fishery. That you need to allow. That's why these slots, and sometimes on some lakes, and you know, we're not. That's a whole other show about strict slot limits in certain lakes. But you know, Scotty, if you don't let that fish mature and spawn once before it's eaten, you are doing yourself a disservice to that lake that you fish for them. You really are. And that's not just for walleye. That's for any sport fish out there. If that fish cannot breed once before it's eaten, you have really, really hurt that lake's chances. You've taken one breeder, and the bigger the fish, the more important they are. So, like, you know, to think, no, that you just said there, the males are 3 to 4 pounds, and then the females are like 4 to 5 pounds.
Yeah.
So if you keep a 3-pound fish out of Bay of Quinte, there's a good chance that fish might not have spawned yet. Like, that's what that tells us, man.
Yeah, you're right. And you know, as the comments are put there, firstly, they taste better than the larger fish.
Yep. Yeah.
I listen. I have varying degrees of belief on that. You know, some don't see a difference, some don't taste a difference. What I will say is the amount of toxins in a smaller fish, in a lot of cases, are a lot less than that of a larger counterpart. So is it safe to say that it's safer to eat smaller fish?
Yeah, it is safer to eat smaller fish. I think it's kind of one of those things about. Let's talk about limits again, man.
Yeah.
Okay. So this winter, I went perch fishing a lot, and I could tell you, and even last summer during COVID, we did a lot of perch fishing, and man, 50 perch, like 59 to 11-inch perch, that'll feed this. And I live with like Stephanie will devour a plate of perch. Like you throw some beer batter on there, it's lights out, man. And that'll feed us like 3 meals, 50 perch.
Yeah.
If you have some fries and some slaw and you kind of do it up, like I'm just happy eating the fish, but Heather likes the spread, which is all good, right? And dude, so like you think about that, like we're talking Bitcoin for a walleye, you're allowed 1 over 24. Is it 24? I always have to look it up. I think it's 1 over 24,
is it
or and 3 under, or 4, or it's either 4 under, or it's 3 under and 1 over 24. I think it's 24.
I think it's 3 under.
24,
yeah.
24 points. Whatever. I always have to look it up when I go.
I do too. Yeah, I should know off by heart.
But in the end, that's a lot of meat. That's a lot of meat. You know, and we've seen the issues. We've seen it recently where even the most careful angler out there, if you eat more than the suggested meals a month of walleye, you're putting yourself a disservice potentially, right? Mm-hmm. So it's all about moderation. And I think for us, if you love your walleye fishery, you know, keep a couple walleye, go catch some perch, go catch a few crappie. There's other things to eat too, right? Like, you know, I'm not telling people not to throw all their catch back, have a feed once in a while, but there are people out there who just harvest too many fish. And that's what that post is about is, 100%. You know, I'm not saying not to keep any 3-pound walleye. I'm just saying like, just be maybe be reasonable. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say to all the anglers. And I think for a lot of the ones on this call, this isn't the group we need to talk to.
No.
There's a lot bigger group we need to talk to, right?
Now, you know, when you establish a limit like 50, you know, when was a limit like that established? Back in what, the 80s?
Oh my God. You know what? It was established. I think it was established in the late, I want to say it was in the late 90s, Scotty, because let me think about this for a minute. God, I'm getting old. Okay. So in 2005, 2006 maybe, I was on the Fisheries Management Zone Council for Zone 17, which was in Kawartha Lakes area. And I was working at Central Lake Ontario Conservation at the time as a biologist, but I was on the Zone Council as a representative of Bass Nation. And on that council, there was a bunch of us from Muskies Canada, OFAH, and all kinds of different stakeholders. And that was the first time that so what that council did, we got ice fishing permitted on the Kawartha Lakes. And one of those things was panfish only. And, you know, and we could say, well, that kind of sucks because I want to fish for walleye. But what was happening was the lakes north of Peterborough were getting decimated by ice anglers because there was no fishing around the Kawarthas. So there's pros and cons to all these choices. But we put in the limits of panfish at 50 and 100 because in 1995 I was working as a creel kid on Rice Lake, and I would have to survey bluegill scales. And in 2001 I did the same thing. I was collecting scale samples for MNRF while I was doing my creel. And if you want to get into the fisheries realm, do a creel job. That is one of the best and crappiest jobs at the same time.
Oh, it sucks. It sucks. And I volunteered. And usually it's never in good weather. It's always in the worst weather. It's cold. I remember doing one where we were having to push the ice out of the way. It was ridiculous. I've been out in the Bay of Quinte harvesting walleye to get the eggs in the milk, and it's snowing. 30-mile-an-hour winds. I don't even know how the boat got out to some of those floating cribs to get the fish.
I'll take you the other side of it. I'll take it to a June day, 30 degrees. Without Humidex, and I'm in a fish cleaning hut at Southview Cottages on Rice Lake, and I'm literally going through people's barrels of bluegills, barrels. There was anglers coming up from the U.S. I'm not trying to pick on our American friends, but they would come up with 2 boats, 6 anglers, okay? 2 boats would go out in the morning catching bluegills on the flats out by Cow Island. They would come back, and then 2 of those anglers would switch out. The other 2 would go out. So there's 6 guys, always 4 out fishing, always 2 cleaning fish. They would load their GMC Astro van full of coolers of panfish and take it back to Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Sometimes they sell it, sometimes they eat it. There was no limits on panfish before the 2000s in Ontario. And it was like, why do you need that much? But Scotty, 700, 800 pounds of panfish in a week on Rice Lake was the norm. And then there was a complaint from cottage associations. Well, what if you put limits in? You're going to ruin our business. They still came because in Ohio, you're not allowed to keep more than like 10 or 20. 50 is still too high. 100 possession, you're killing me. That's way too high.
Listen, I remember fishing Lake Simcoe back in the day when, again, our American counterparts, and we're not trying to point fingers by any means. They were only doing what they were allowed to do. But FedEx and UPS trucks would show up at the shoreline and would pick up fish only to have them delivered back home. And these boys would continue to fish. Again, they were manipulating the rules, and it was ethically probably not the right thing, but it wasn't necessarily against the law.
And as anglers, we should be disappointed in that and disappointed in ourselves because we didn't speak up, because we like the high limits because of that one day in 10. Yeah. That one day in 10 years where I caught 100 perch and I kept as many as, man, we filled the pails. I can remember me coming off Long Point Bay with Grandpa George, and dude, we had 5-gallon buckets full of 8-inch and 9-inch yellow perch full. I can remember those days. Those are fun days.
Absolutely. And really catch and release, you talked to Big Jim. It really didn't become part of our vocabulary until the 90s. Like it really, it really started to get we started to get the message out in the 90s, which really for us, you and I, that's not that far back. I mean, it may seem an eternity, but it's not really that far back. I do have a question here that is great. David's asking, is there any evidence of people getting sick from eating too many fish? Now, I do believe we did a segment about 3 weeks ago, where that guy got poisoning from eating too much fish.
So there's been a couple of stories in the media recently about contamination of fish, and there's the rainbow smelt one, but the one that really hits home is that CBC story about that guide from Algoma. Yeah. Was it Algoma or Sault Ste. Marie or somewhere up there?
I think it was Algoma District, but I think it was out of Sault Ste. Marie that the
I think so too.
From. Yeah.
So it was a guide. I want to say he was in his late 30s, early 40s. Ate probably 4 meals a week of fish, probably for the better part of a year or two. Started feeling sick. Had some like his symptoms were pretty odd. Like when he read the article, went to the doctor. They're like, you have mercury poisoning. So he's better now. It took him, I think, 2 years of treatment to get him back around. And it's from eating fish. Are those lakes polluted? Like we're not topping. Sault Ste. Marie. There. Thanks, Tony. We're not talking like a Great Lakes harbor like Hamilton Harbor polluted. These are Canadian Shield lakes that are full of natural mercury. It happens. Like those granite rocks just ooze out mercury in small amounts. You could eat small amounts of mercury. Like it's not advisable to eat lots of it, but that's why they talk. I'm going to go back to that whole moderation. What is moderation? Well, don't eat 4 meals a week. Apparently, I think that's the number. Like you see 8 meals a month, and I'm like, well, that's 2 meals a week, and it's still a lot of fish. Like for us here, we wouldn't eat 8 meals a week. I don't keep enough fish to do that. It wouldn't happen. But to have a couple meals in 1 week once in a while, that's not odd. But 3 to 4 meals a week for a long period of time got someone very, very sick. So,
yeah. So to answer your question, David, that is the one I would say defining piece of evidence.
That's an eye opener to me. Eye opener.
To your point, though, David, you don't hear a lot of it. And we talk about making sure that everything's in moderation, as Erica's pointed out, everything in moderation. Absolutely. So we're certainly not here to suggest to people that you're going to get eating fish.
When you read his symptoms, it's kind of like, you hear about people getting Lyme disease, Scotty, and then sometimes it gets misdiagnosed. I'm not saying he was misdiagnosed. I think he was diagnosed properly, but he could have been diagnosed with something else, right? Like the symptoms, it wasn't like he was having like major cardiac or breathing issues. It was like some motor skill stuff and like some cognitive kind of stuff. Like it was very mild, and the doctor came, and it seemed to have worked because he did the treatment. He's come back around. So obviously the doctor must have, because the doctor wouldn't treat him with how he treated him if it wasn't mercury poisoning. So he must have caught it. But the symptoms, to me, he could have been diagnosed with something else too. Like, I'm not saying that doctors always get it right. They usually do get it right. But, I'm just happy for that individual that it was caught, But that's an eye opener, because you'd think in Northern Ontario, like it should be an all-you-can-eat sushi bar, right?
And, you're right. I know exactly what you mean and what you're saying. You're right. When you think that far north, it blows my mind. It blows my mind that you could think of an area within this Lake Superior, the grandiose of all of our Great Lakes, one of the clearest of our Great Lakes, that it is that polluted that our smelt are no longer being told to be consumed, and anything that eats those smelt.
And that's another thing too. Like, has the smelt always been bad for us? Like, sometimes we come up with different tests that tell us different things. Like, I mentioned tonight that isotope work where you can figure out food web dynamics. That's all fairly new science that wasn't around. Like, they used to use gastro lavage, which is you basically pump the stomachs of large fish. Why the isotope stuff works so well is, if you try to gastro lavage a yellow perch that's 8 inches long, you're just going to kill the yellow perch. Okay.
Amen.
It's easier just to kill that fish. It's hard to say it. And take tissue samples and do the analysis. You don't have to, and that's the thing, the dirty business, Scotty. You want to age fish properly, you're bonking them on the head.
Well, and it's funny because when I first said that they were cutting their stomachs open, because when they were probably talking about it during the segment, I'm like, they might as well have just cut them up. Like, really, at the end of the day, the chances of the survival of those fish is 50-50 at best.
Yeah. Well, the study right here is from 2010 when they did that. 96 muskies, 244 striped bass. Dude, I can find this stuff pretty fast if you give me 30 seconds. And the main diet of muskellunge was white perch, which is the same white perch we have in the lower Great Lakes, yellow perch, American shad, and American eel was the main diet of muskellunge and striped bass. And it's been suggested that in the St. John River, white sucker and yellow perch are probably the main diet.
So there you go. Yeah,
and that was gastro lavage. That's how they
science. Like, to me, you can't denounce science. Chris Dillon has a question here in regards to Lake of the Woods. What's your opinion on how hard Lake of the Woods gets ice fished? Is what I'm assuming.
Ice fishing. Yeah.
I know part is in the U.S., but do you think it can last?
Do you know what, Chris? I think I just read an article. Good Lord. Okay. I'm going to type this up because I think I just read this. Voluntary Lake of the Woods walleye limits. I read a story. So we saw that we heard recently that Lake of the Woods is hurting.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that they might be proposing conservation limits and even like voluntary limits for guides and resorts on the U.S. side. I've heard that recently. Like, that's because they don't want it. Hey, listen, if that fishery goes down, so does the economy.
Oh, huge.
Right?
Huge.
So, and this goes back to moderation. Like, dude, if I took you to the Goyne Reservoir in central Quebec near Val d'Or, you and I could bring home 8 walleye and 10 northern pike each. That's a lot of fish, man.
It is a lot of fish.
You know, and if we go there for the weekend, we're probably going to have, if we go there for a 4-day weekend, we're going to probably have 2 meals of walleye, plus I'm bringing home my 8. That's a lot.
Yep.
So if you're going to the Lake of the Woods and you say, we're only going to keep 5, that's a lot of fish you're saving, right? It is. Moderation. 3 fish go back. Maybe give yourself your own slot limit too, right? Based on the, I don't know the local biology of Lake of the Woods walleye. They're different than they are in Lake Erie, that's for sure. But
their concerns, you know, and you're right. I think who was it, Mark, that brought up Mark article about how their numbers are down for walleye. This has been a concern since the 90s. The state of catch could not be sustained. That they were starting to see real concerns when you talk about harvest, and this is back in the 90s. That they had these concerns, and we're only starting to really see the effects of that. I don't want to say over harvest, but that insatiable harvest that unfortunately it's just been proven can't be sustained. So
here it is, man.
Right sooner.
I got it right here. Headline from Timber J, which is Minnesota. Conservation limits proposed. Lake Association guides and resorts propose tighter voluntary bag limits on walleye. That was dated April 21st, 2021. I just put it in the chat. So that was last week.
You know,
almost 2 days ago.
And you're 100% right. And as I said, it's sad being a walleye lover. I've known about this since the 90s when people started to voice concerns about that fishery. Richard Dunlop brings up a good point in something that I don't know a lot about. But Quebec and how their stewardship works for their bodies of water is a little bit different than here in Ontario. And some would argue emphatically that it's a better system than here in Ontario.
So that could be. I'm going to go back to what Lawrence talked about and about proximity to major centers. Like, you know, so you go out to Ottawa, and then you have. Well, Alicia, you have no idea. I can figure it out. I can Google fish science pretty quick. It literally is part of my job some days. But once you get past Montreal, you know, and you get up to some of those you don't have to get too far to get away from people, right? In Ontario, you have to go north quite a ways to get away from that influence of civilization. Okay, basically, you have to get up to Algonquin Park. That's to me, that's the dividing line between Northern Ontario and Southern Ontario. You got to get basically north of the Trans-Canada, right? And I know that's not true geographically. There's still way more country up there, but you got to put that line between you. Like, we're all Southern Ontario, south of Algonquin, and there's way too much pressure on our lakes. Even recently, Zone 16, which is probably the most pressured zone for fishing in all of Ontario, hell, all of Canada. You have everything in Zone 16 from the Grand River, the Thames River, the Saugeen River, Tobermory's in it, Lake Simcoe's in it, most of the GTA's in it.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you manage all those fishing, recreational angling interests? How? So it's actually being put up on the EBR now, where they're trying to figure out. And man, it was as a government employee, it's hard to read, because they're not talking about regulations. They're trying to figure out how to manage that zone. I really believe they need to break the zone up. I hate to make our regulations more complicated. There's way too many things going on in that zone. We have way too many concerns. Or the other way of doing it is you get back to fisheries management zone councils and you do it virtually, but you need a council for Lake Simcoe on its own. You need a cold water council. You need a warm water council, right? And you might even want to throw in a Lake Erie council and a Lake Erie St. Clair council, and maybe a Lake Huron council, something like that. You need to, this is all pie in the sky. I know it's going to happen, but how do you manage that? All those interests in Zone 16, like that's an incredible task. I don't know how to do it.
No, I agree. And how many COs do we have to police that area? Like 5, 6? Like not very many.
Well, yeah, there's more than that, but there's only so many to go around. Like, they each work every, like, there's only so many days in the week. And then here's the thing too, what people don't realize that once COs make a charge, they're caught up in paperwork for a while. Like you got to go to court. You have to follow through with the charges. Like, it's not like the CO charges somebody and passes off the ticket to someone in the office.
Great point.
You're going to court. Like,
great point.
And so I'm not saying they're selective with what they do. They kind of have to be. They'll set up stings in priority areas. And I've told people that with COs, if you don't call in a report, you're part of the problem. I have no problem saying that. And you might get disappointed because someone doesn't show up right away. You need to call again and again because they're only going to show up in high problem areas. I'm sorry, but that's reality. Mm-hmm. They can't be everywhere at once. But I agree with you. Like Zone 16 is a man. What a place! What a place it is. It's such a great place to fish. Like I lived in the heart of Zone 16. But man, for managing fisheries, it's tough. It's a tough one.
Amen. Well, Jay, listen, we've had a long segment. I know Mark is sitting back very patiently to give away his great prize pack. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's the honor system. And as Bill has mentioned, it has been a steadfast desire up in Horwood Lake and Horwood Lake Lodge to not target fish over a certain size. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Bill, Mike mandated 17, possibly 17 and a half inch to be returned. So it's those kind of initiatives. Yeah, a lodge owner taking it upon himself to make sure that his fishery's there for many, many years to come. So I applaud Mike in his departure, and I congratulate Wayne and his wife on their arrival. And it's going to be interesting to see the transition, and we're glad that CFN is going to be a part of it, as they mentioned in the comments. But Jay,
so I got one thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2 things. One, happy anniversary to my wife Heather. So our anniversary was on Saturday. 17 years. It's the furniture anniversary, but we don't want any more furniture. We were trying to get rid of furniture. We got our AstraZeneca shot on Friday.
Boom.
Done. First round. Friday night was rough. Had the chills, had the fever, but I was better Sunday. Heather's still a little rough. I'm not gonna lie. She's been tired. It's the lack of sleep and the aches and pains. The other anniversary I'm gonna announce, and I just figured this out this week. This is my 1-year anniversary for being a CFN.
Hey, man, time flies. And Jay,
time flies, buddy.
Listen, some people would say that this is a niche community, that, I don't know how to put it into words, but what we have here is a diamond in the rough. And for those who join us each and every Monday, you understand the wealth of knowledge and information that is shared by our 3 panel of guests. And they come here, they're eager. Like, it's not just Mondays. This switch doesn't go off. Jay and I are texting back and forth throughout the week, certain articles, certain segments, our legacy members. Like there's a whole process in play here. A lot of moving parts. We'll have discussions. Somebody will put something in the group chat and all of a sudden, boom, we're discussing it on Monday. So all these moving parts and everyone who's associated with it and has a part in it, hats off. Jay, happy anniversary. And all I can say, my friend, on behalf of CFN is thank you for all you do, my friend.
Thanks to you guys. It's been a great year, and that's why we signed up to the team. The Real Anglers are going to participate in the CFN Fish Off this year. All signed up.
Well, fingers crossed that we're actually going to be able to do it, man, because I'll tell you.
I know.
We are getting close to
We're doing something. Scotty, we're going to do something. Something's going to happen.
You're 100% right.
Something's going to happen.
You're 100% right. Well, listen, on that note, thanks so much for joining us. And
see you guys. See everyone. See you in a bit, Mike.
Right on. And just before we get to our good friend Mark, let's have a word from our sponsor.
When it comes to Canadian food, we've got your back with flavors like lemon pepper, beer batter, campfire barbecue, lemon pepper dill, garlic butter and chives, and crispy Cajun. We've got a mix for every meal. Whether you're serving East Coast shrimp, West Coast salmon, succulent walleye, chicken wings, or veggies, we've got you covered. Coat your food in outdoor flavors. Available online or at these fine retailers.
Mark is in the house. How you doing, Mark?
What's going on, Scotty? You hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Thanks so much for sticking around and being patient. As I said, you know, it's sometimes I literally, as you saw, for a good 20 minutes, I sat back and said not a word as the two of them were going back and forth. And I tell you, that kind of exchange, you know, people pay top dollar to hear that kind of stuff, because a lot of what they were discussing was not only coming from here, but it was coming from here. And the fact that we can keep it on the rails and keep it respectful and what have you, and just gain a wealth of information, I applaud those two. That was an incredible exchange and a great segment. So thanks for sticking through it and being patient. But I wanted to bring you on, as we're going to try and do with all of our giveaway guests that come on our TNT Thursdays. Had a great response to the giveaway. Yeah. Maybe you could explain the giveaway again, if in fact you are the winner.
Right. So what we're giving away is a free trip with one person and one, I'm going to say, under 18, so under an adult age. So I think that's fair to along the lines of what you and I both want to do, is bring some kids into the fishing world and encourage that, and hopefully someone that's never really been out on the water in a joyful day. Hopefully we get some bass, and I've got another prize pack to give away, Scotty. I want to give these people something from a couple of my sponsors too. So I didn't mention it before.
Oh yeah. So as I said, here, I'm just going to play a couple things for you guys. Oh, look at this.
Yeah.
So these are some of the wonderful fish that you'll be able to target when you're out with our good buddy Mark. Walleye, smallmouth, and it's quite the fishery. Let's be perfectly honest. He even fillets the fish for you. Probably not. Not small.
Sure. Not smallmouth, but the walleye.
But walleye for sure.
So here's the prize pack. What it's going to be is, this one is the walleye pack, but I'll do a couple bass packs too. These are courtesy of my sponsors, Angler's Choice and Domo's Custom Tackle. I'll show you a couple of the lures just quickly. We talked about the walleye minnow. Here it is there.
Nice.
Right. And I got some jig heads, some Domo's jig heads. Nice. We'll give you some heavy ones for the walleye jigging. And for bass fishing, we'll set up a custom box for you with different gear. I'll give you some hooks too.
Right on. So you got that prize pack, and you want to give that up, give that out as a runner-up?
We can. Yeah, we can do that for sure.
Okay. Sure. So what we'll do then is I will bring up the wheel of names.
Okay.
The name wheel. There it is there. Now, I don't know if anybody can see the names on it, but I am going to ask our beloved guest, Mark, to tell me how many times you would like to shuffle the deck. 1 to 7, pick a number.
Let's go lucky 7.
All right. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. So it's been shuffled 7 times. And just so everybody knows, this is how we always run it here at CFN. It's last man or woman standing. And I will say there were a lot of female anglers that qualified for this contest. So as I say, these are the names. We are going to spin it till we get to the last 2 names. The name that is still remaining that's not chosen is the winner. The runner-up will get the tackle pack that is being provided by our beloved friend, Mark. Let's spin the wheel.
Good luck to everybody.
Absolutely. Now, Mark, when does your season officially start for bass? The opening day?
Yeah, so it's the last Saturday in June.
Last Saturday in June. Right on.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Fernando. It will not be you. We will remove you from the wheel. We'll keep spinning. You can talk as we're spinning, Mark, by all means.
Okay.
Spin whenever you want.
Yeah. So it's the last Saturday in June. it's usually really, really good fishing opening. It's really good all summer long. It just depends on the stability of the weather. Usually the weather stability has a lot to do with the smallmouth fishing on St. Clair. Sunny days, we go shallow, which is a lot of fun. Cloudier days with a bit of a breeze, we'll go out in the main lake and look around for the deep water fish. So we'll be running drop shots, tubes, crankbaits. Depends on the ability of the angler that wants to come out with me. And we'll train them on whatever technique they want to learn. If they're a seasoned angler, we can just go out and fine tune some of their techniques. Maybe I can show them little tips on what I do just to help them out. If they just want to go out for a fun day and rifle on some fish, that's good with me too.
So, and I think you said that in your segment in regards to, if you are the winner, it would be great if you reached out to Mark to let him know what it is that you're hoping to gain from this charter.
Excellent. Yeah, great point, Scotty, because I want to see the people's ability beforehand. I don't want to kind of just have to guess at their ability. And again, it's up to them to have their day the best they can make it. If they want to go out and even perch fish. I mean, there's times when we're on schools of perch out there, and kids love perch fishing too.
Yeah.
Also, there's a wicked panfish fishery there, and Jay was talking about the keeping of panfish, and that's one of the lakes that I suggest keeping panfish. There is a ton of bluegills there, and there's some monsters too. So we can keep perch, we can keep bluegill. There's always the when I'm fishing for bass, there's always a coincidental catch of walleye as well. So we could take a couple walleye home too, usually.
And when you're targeting bass, how deep are you roughly in St. Clair?
Again, like it says, I depend on the weather conditions to let me tell where the fish are going to be. I generally it's a shallow water fishery when it's really sunny, believe it or not. And a lot of people think it's the other way, but I've learned it's a shallow water fishery and sunny.
I would have been one of those people
most are like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
we're getting lots of names off the wheel here, but you keep going, my friend.
Okay. So we can drop shotting is the most prevalent way of fishing. And if people, even if they're not the winners and they want to look up for a day with me, they can just look on my website and see my availability. SparkusFisherFishing.com. Again, I'm starting to get some trips booked for July. August is pretty much wide open. Actually, Brian and I arranged a trip today.
Nice.
Brian, he texted me and told me about the winner, and the winner couldn't make it for his competition that I donated. And so he's going to come out with me for the day and a buddy, and we're going to go fishing. So that's in August. We booked that up today.
And we've got a Walleye Wednesday pick that we're going to be highlighting this Wednesday. I forget who the gentleman was that you shared, but he had two walleye. He was holding up two walleye. Can't remember the name.
Yeah, that was Matt Kelly, friend of mine.
Matt Kelly, there you go.
Yeah. So he doesn't really walleye fish. He's a wicked stick on St. Clair and Erie for smallmouth, but he wanted to come out for walleye with me. So we socially distanced, and he stayed at one end and I stayed at the other, and he caught a few. And I'm not going to say he aced them like he does when he's out fishing me on bass fishing tournaments, but he got a few. So it was good.
That's awesome. Well, and they look like healthy fish. It's nice to see, at the end of the day, not all of us are able to get out because of COVID and everything that's going on. So we do live vicariously through some of you who are able to get out and do the social distance and what have you. So it's awesome that you guys are able to do that and do it in an ethical manner, which is ensuring the safety of everybody. So that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Matt, I got to put a shout out to Matt also. He runs a really great mechanic shop called Top Gear Automotive in Cambridge. And he's my mechanic for my truck as well as my boat, and he's phenomenal. So if you guys need a really good mechanic in Cambridge area, he's awesome. Top Gear Automotive.
That's awesome. Any other sponsors that you wanted to mention while we've got a little bit of time here left?
Yeah, we got Ultra Tungsten. We've got Angler's Choice. We have I'm new with another company. Why shouldn't I? I shouldn't forget it. I'm with Gill Clothing, Gill Fishing Gear. Oh man, I just forgot. Domos Tackle. I've started a couple new ones. Domos Tackle. Angling Outfitters in Woodstock helps me out a lot too. So those are the primary ones. Sunline I'm with as well. EGO Nets, I'm on the field staff for them. And I also just got to deal with Corker's footwear too for steel.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you like those? You like
do.
those? Yeah.
I really do. They're an amazing company. Their warranty is what got me. And I said, you know what? Any company that does a warranty like that, I really got to do it, like 100%.
I was looking at those. They look comfortable as all heck. They look perfect for that.
And
yeah.
I put them through the test, and I've been wearing them for like 3 or 4 winters now, and they are indestructible. And if anything goes wrong, they will replace it, like hands down. So
interesting. Good to know.
Any company like that, I'm really with them. So wow, we're down to what, 5 people?
Yeah, this is incredible. It seems
cow.
like we just
Alicia
started.
and Susan.
Yeah, you've
they're seasoned veterans.
Between Curtis, so it's going to be the ladies. It's going to be a ladies event. Look at this.
It is. Susan's a seasoned veteran on Lake St. Clair as well. She goes out with a friend of mine, Colin, quite often. Alicia is like a competitor. I can't tell her anything. We're gonna have to she's gonna have to tell me her secrets when we go out there. So we'll see how that goes.
There we go. Well, it's gonna get down.
It's not Alicia.
It's how close is this gonna be? Wow.
Sorry, Alicia.
I sincerely apologize, Alicia, but
that was a close one.
2 very deserved anglers left.
Yes.
Susan, I gotta give a big shout out to Susan for the Muskie Odyssey and all the work that she did for that. And of course, Ava Wickens, who did some great work with the casting directors and CFN Fish Off. So the next name that's picked is going to win the tackle pack that's offered up by our good friend Mark. You will win that as a runner-up prize. And the last woman standing is going to be joining our good friend Mark out on Lake St. Clair. So let's find out who our winner is.
Here we go. Let's see.
Let's do this. Oh, that's a whole lot of I'm going to get past.
Oh, Susan, sorry.
Fantastic.
Oh, Ava, congratulations.
Congratulations as our runner-up, Susan.
Yeah,
and of
Susan,
course, congratulations to Ava Wickens, who has managed to pull this out of the hat. And Mark, congratulations to you, buddy, for doing this. As I said, can't thank you enough for all you've done to help better our community by providing a great prize pack, some great information, and some good how-to videos. Hopefully, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you keep them coming because, dude, we love them.
Absolutely. I'll try to keep up with you, and let's do this every year or something like that, or more regular anyways. We can just discuss fishing. We don't have to just push the guide thing. We can just discuss fishing. I'm good with that too.
Sounds like a plan, buddy. Well, listen, thanks so much for sticking around and being patient. And again, on behalf of Ava, Susan, and the rest of CFN, thanks, Mark. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, Ava's going to contact me, I guess. Is that how it works?
Yes. Okay. We'll set up a group chat. She has her pick of the litter when it comes to young anglers under the age of 18. So I'm sure she's going to have no problem finding a companion to go with her. So, Ava, congratulations. And I will get you in touch with Mark. But it looks like you are going fishing, my lady.
Awesome.
Right on, buddy.
Thank you very much, Scotty. Appreciate it again.
Thanks, Mark. You take care, my friend. Listen, guys, again, great show. Fantastic show. Incredible exchange of conversation, fish knowledge, 411 know-how, and some really great topics from the heart and from the mind, science included, as well as what our beliefs are as an angler. If there's anything that you can take from this episode, is at the end of the day, we as anglers are in control of our fisheries. And practicing catch and release, making sure that you are selectively harvesting certain fish, and you're not harvesting all the time. The saying always goes, catch your limit, but limit your catch. If we can somehow pass that message on to the rest of our communities and our industry, just think of how good our fisheries are going to be. Keeping that in mind, guys, you have yourself a great week. Love you all. Thanks so much for joining me. And I appreciate everyone that has helped put this show together. Bill, Steve, and the rest of our legacy members. You guys rock. Take care. All the best and enjoy the rest of your week.